Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. We're continuing. We're having somewhat of a continuation of yesterday's space, where we kind of touched on Germanic lineages. Is that the plural conjugation of lineages? Lineages? Is it linea? I'm not sure, but you know what I'm saying. We're trying to figure out what this is all about, ladies and gentlemen. My dear colleague Onthespotts brought something to my attention. She brought to my attention that a lot of all the filth and debauchery and warfare in the world comes from Germanic lineage. And me being the person that I am and the historian that I am, beg the question: who are these people really? I haven't got an answer yet. So if any of y'all know or have a clue, please grab a mic and educate me. I'm not above being educated. I don't know everything. Well, what we discovered yesterday is that the system of education was infiltrated. Um, the American system of education was infiltrated by the Germans. I'm looking for the exact quote. When I find it, I'll let you know. I'll say it again, but um, Germanic people wanted to change the education system in America, which is very interesting because it was established that most narcotics, if not all narcotics, and now when I say narcotics, I mean what's the word? Enriched narcotics. Cocaine exists naturally. Um,
They
Opium
call it isolated and synthesized.
synthesized. That's the word. Synthesized narcotics come from Germanic people. Synthesized narcotics are very addictive substances. Um, Dr. Marimba Ani said, when God creates, he creates in pairs: male, female, negative, positive, and the like. Dr. Laila Africa said that when God's sugar, like for instance, when you eat an orange, the orange has as much pulp in it as it has sugar. So all the sugar that you take in your body, the pulp is designed to take it out or scrub a lot of it out. So you don't get diabetes, according to Dr. Laila Africa, from eating, oranges. But when you eat European sugar, when you eat synthesized bleached sugar, bleached flour, is isolated. That's the word that Wani was bringing up. Isolated is really, in a sense, weaponized sugar. It's weaponized pure white cocaine. Is weaponized drugs. It's created. It's enhanced on a magnitude that your body's not designed to handle, and that creates addiction. I know from my last scholarship venture, my last book I just published, that crack cocaine was created in a lab specifically for its addictive qualities on melanated nervous system. So I'm saying that to say drugs have been created to target people, different groups of people with respect to addiction. But what we're going to look at today is, did German people create narcotics? We learned that yesterday. Did they create Psyops? Did they create feminism and weapons? And I'm going to add in secret societies. A secret society y'all know so well and so afraid of came from a German, a former law professor named Adam Weishaupt. The name of the group is the Illuminati. Yeah, I said it. So, Wani, did Germanic people create narcotics?
Yes, they did. They seem to have isolated so many substances that are highly addictive. And that whole military was being issued these drugs. Because when you look at some of the activities they're doing and the heightened violence, you really do wonder, like, how can these men do all this stuff and have piles and piles of dead bodies at concentration camps and then go home and eat dinner? Some of these people lived on the in the camp or right outside of it within. And how can they live there with all kinds of smoke going up in the air of people? How can they live there? How can they Okay, they couldn't keep up with all those bodies. So they had tons and tons of people stacked up, and they're just walking around like nobody's business, bothering people, just torturing people on the side, because those drugs make people very violent. Meth makes people very, very violent. So that's why they had no problem acting out all the violence. They were very alert because they said they were mostly giving them stimulants. And so, yes, they were on drugs, and this wasn't just random guys. They were being given these, issued these like you were issued your boots and pants. Some of them were asking for more, so they were writing to their family members asking them for more meth. It's called Peverin or something. I have to look it up, but it was a specific type, and they were asking their family members to send them more because apparently the issued drugs weren't enough for them. And then, of course, it's documented. This isn't hearsay that Hitler was on drug cocktails, very powerful drug cocktails. He was very sick. He was a hypochondriac. He was a vegetarian, which I'm a vegan, so I'm not against that. But he thought that everything was making him sick. So that's why he was a vegetarian. He thought meat was going to make him sick, and he thought this was wrong and that was wrong. He had a lot of mental problems. So you can see with all of those drugs pumped into that movement, the Nazi regime, why it went off the rails and why they just accepted all kinds of crazy ideologies like Aryans. Aryans are Indo-Aryans are gypsies. Gypsies are an Indo-Aryan group, and they're the opposite of purity among white people, whatever that is. We really don't even know what purity is. I mean, when you think about the waves of immigration or migration coming out of Africa, there is no purity for real. You just have people that have isolated themselves until they have a certain look, and they can maintain that look by marrying within their own group. So, yeah, they did isolate a disproportionate amount of narcotics. And then what's basically happened is that they had these ideologies, and they were going back and forth with Jewish people for about 1,000 years. Um, Having this tension And it's spilled over to the United States of America, where they still act out all these things here. So they will isolate all these drugs and create all these like interest in sexology, and then the other people will act it out. It's kind of like a strange relationship. They will bring this up. They'll say, hey, sexology, let's study human sex, different things that humans want to do. They'll have this scholarly study, and then the other people will create a sexology group and then start doing sex change operations. So they've basically been going back and forth with each other, arguing about religions, differences in religion and different ideologies. And they've brought that here. And it appears that we're doing these things when in fact we as Americans are not doing those things. We're just receiving in all of these immigrants that are having a 1,000-year war against each other over in Europe, and they just brought it over here after the Holocaust. It really got heightened over here.
I'm talking through a mute again. I just learned something while you were talking. You made me think because I found a quote. Every time I look through Dr. Zen's book, I find something that I miss. It's just one. It's one of those books. It's just jam packed full. It's just so much. I've been reading and reading it for years and years and years. It's falling to pieces. And I find something. I'm looking for one thing. I find something else. What I found is something I already knew. According to Dr. Howard Zinn, Rockefeller was a donor to colleges all over the country. Put on your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen. Y'all are going to like this one because this fits right into what Wani's talking about, and it's fucking interesting. Rockefeller was, quote, Rockefeller was a donor to colleges all over the country. You see, Rockefeller was interested in education. That's important. And he helped found the University of Chicago. Stop right there. Now, according to Mark Carter, our brother Mark Carter, University of Chicago is behind allegedly. University of Chicago is allegedly behind a lot of nefarious activity in the black community. Allegedly, well, I know for a fact that University of Chicago was instrumental in the creation of the nuclear weapon, of the atomic bomb, which is now the trigger mechanism for thermonuclear weapons, the most destructive weapon that we know of that's known to man, created right at University of Chicago, which Rockefeller helped to establish. All right, let's keep going. Huntington of the Central Pacific gave money to the Negro colleges. Stop right there. Rockefeller gave money to Hampton Institute in Tuskegee. Now, Booker T. Washington finessed Rockefeller out that Tuskegee money. Booker T. Washington, one of my heroes, played the raccoon, if you know what I mean, and told Rockefeller, yes, so we need money because the Negro is dumb. The Negro needs to be a maid and a janitor and a porter, and I need a school to make the finest porters and janitors on the planet. And Rockefeller gave him a couple million to establish the school, and Booker T went and made the finest goddamn physics institution in the world. The military still makes has top secret divisions there. The Tuskegee Airmen were trained at Tuskegee Institute. That cost Booker T. Washington his life. Fooling Rockefeller cost him his life. And nobody wants to talk about that, but I'm here to do so. Moving right along, Carnegie gave money to colleges and libraries. Johns Hopkins was founded by a millionaire merchant, and the millionaires Cornelius Vanderbilt, Ezra Cornell, James Duke, and Leland Stanford created universities in their names. Every institute I mentioned allegedly is associated with something nefarious. Allegedly, Leland Stanford, I almost don't want to say allegedly, but just to cover my ass, I'm going to say allegedly, Leland Stanford University is behind bias testing. I learned that in grad school, but anyway, I'm going to leave that alone. All right, back to the business. Quote, the rich giving part of their enormous earnings in this way became known as philanthropists. These educational institutions did not encourage dissent. Y'all heard what the fuck I just said? These educational institutions did not encourage dissent. They trained the middlemen in American system, the teachers, the doctors, the lawyers, administrators, engineers, technicians, politicians, those who would be paid to keep the system going, to be loyal buffers against trouble. What Dr. Howard Zinn just said is these people, these millionaire, billionaire occultists, thank you, established university system to create people who would keep the system in place and not have any type of dissent, even though the purpose of college, the purpose of university, according to Professor Chris Hedges, is to be subversive. If something isn't working, you need to take it apart and rebuild it. But that's not what these elite universities are for. These elite universities are to create drones that would maintain the system. Last thing I'm going to read, Dr. Zen says, in the meantime, the spread of the public school education enabled the learning of writing, reading, and arithmetic for a whole generation of workers, skilled and semi-skilled, who would be the literate labor force of the new industrial age. It was important that these people learned obedience to authority. A journalist observer of these schools in the 1890s wrote, the unkindly spirit of the teacher is strikingly apparent. The pupils, being completely subjugated to her will, are silent and motionless. The spiritual atmosphere of the classroom is damp and chilly. Back in 1859, the desire of the mill workers in the town of Lowell that their workers be educated was explained by the Secretary of Massachusetts Board of Education. Quote, the owners of the factories are more concerned than other classes and interest in the intelligence of their laborers. When the latter are well educated and the former are disposed to deal justly, controversies and strikes can never occur, nor can the minds of the masses be prejudiced by the demagogues and controlled by the temporary and fascist considerations. Yes, what I just said, ladies and gentlemen, in a whole bunch of words, is the educational system from the fucking elementary school to the Ivy League to the top 10 to the best universities in the world, air quotes, um, was created to create drones that would say, yes, sir, I obey, I obey, I obey. Now, the main name in this creation of a system that makes drones was Rockefeller. Now, I promised y'all I'd say something that blow your mind because it blew mine. Wani, do you know what Rockefeller's lineage is?
Germanic.
Damn, I've just found that out.
Again, um, that's their ideology to make everybody into drones. You saw the way they had the Nazis walking around like zombies. And this is their ideology that they brought over here, which is not in line with American, you know, it's not in line with American culture. This is what we've been suffering from these people that just look like they were just immigrating, like, oh, it's no big deal. But they come over here with a completely different mind inside, and it's very damaging. It has been very damaging for us. I mean, it started way back when they were described as barbarians. Germanic people were living in turf roof huts, okay? They were not living fancy, and they wanted to take advantage of the fact that the Roman Empire was crumbling, and they struck when they were weakened. And there were a lot of Germanic tribes. Now, they play a lot of games because they'll say Goth, Visigoth, and they have Franks and all these different names. They're Germanic, but they like to jump in and out of these identities. Like we've already seen this 100 times, where you have these groups. They're all Germanic people. So that's where they first showed up, and then they just usurped those seats of power, and they didn't really change the way that Roman uh, structures were set up. They kind of slipped into those seats and kind of kept it going the same way, only they were in power. Germanic people in power of a Greco-Roman structure, completely different than the turf roof huts that they came from. They consolidated power, and then they morphed into all those monarchies that we know about. Every king and queen in Europe, Tsar Nicholas, The Queen of England, all of those people are cousins and they're all German, no matter what they say. I've had people to, including AI, to say, no, no, they're not. This one isn't German. They're all German. Until someone shows me where they're not. Every one of them, at some point, they're like, if I ask AI right now, is the King of Spain German? No, he's the Spanish king. No, he's a Habsburg. They're always going to be German. That's number one. They really have a foothold in those monarchies. So that's the second wave of them. Then the third wave is when they tried to take over the world by being Aryans, which is something they made up. It's not true at all. They're not Aryans. That's going away from pure white. If you're saying that pure white is Nordic. So anyway, that's the third time they tried to take over the world. But this time it wasn't good enough to just be Germanic. It wasn't good enough to colonize every speck of land on Earth. Oh no. Now you have to be a special kind of white. And if you're not good enough. And you need to whiten yourself up according to the Aryan doctrine. He admitted that German people were heavily mixed and that they would have to whiten themselves up. I guess they'd have to go marry a bunch of Swedish people. I don't know. But it never got off the ground because it's not right. It's not correct thinking, and it's Aryan doesn't have anything to do with being hyper white. So that's their attitude of making everything rigid, and they brought that here, and their immigrants that they've been fighting with for 1,000 years are here too, doing their things, doing the things that Germans didn't want them to do, like have sex change clinics, like have bohemian enclaves where they do other freaky things that Germanic people didn't want them to do. They have that war going on, and they brought it over here in the form of beatniks. Who was the head of the beatniks? In the form of MK Ultra, in the form of everything. They just keep going back and forth, batting us back and forth like tennis balls under these different structures. And they just look like regular Americans, but they're not regular Americans. Like I said, one of the first things that I noticed that they did is came over here and changed the meaning of the Statue of Liberty. If that's not having mega balls, I don't know what is. You are an immigrant.
A guest.
You're an immigrant. And you come to the United States of America, write a poem, and decide that you want to bring your people here and they need to be welcomed by a statue that was created to celebrate my people in the Civil War victory. How does that work? And who let them do it? Who keeps letting these people do these infringements on our history?
Wani,
I mean,
Wani, you are establishing a thesis for another piece of literature. That's all I was gonna say. Keep going.
even if you say they don't want to say the Statue of Liberty is about Black Americans, they don't want to say it's about the chain on the foot, the celebrating the Emancipation Proclamation. How do they have the nerve to ignore people fighting in the Civil War? How do they ignore that? Making the United States of America, the statue is about a lot of things that are very important in this country. It's not about welcoming immigrants, it has nothing to do with them, nothing at all.
Right. Wani, this shit is powerful. Um, my question to you is, where are these people from? How far can you trace this Germanic lineage? I know as far as I go, um, from my studies is to the Anglos and the Saxons. Are the Germanics the Anglos or the Saxons? Which one was that?
Let me give you a better
Okay.
idea of what these groups are about. Hold on one second.
While Wani talks, ladies and gentlemen, and you just interrupt me when you're ready, Wani. What we've identified with hardcore, rock solid scholarship. Dr. Howard Zinn, United States Air Force, thank you. And Columbia University, PhD. I think he knows a little bit about something, or knew a little bit of something. May he rest in peace. He identified that Rockefeller established the educational system in this country. Now, how does that have anything to do with black folks? I'm going to tell you why Wani searches for her scholarship. It has everything to do with it. Why? Because during Reconstruction, when our ancestors without college degrees, we need to get back. Side note, sidebar. We need to get back to that old us, that outside of all how fucking educated we are. All these letters I got behind my name come from schools that was just basically, and I went to some damn good schools, but it was brainwash. That's all it was. It wasn't education. It was indoctrination. But Rockefeller jumped in 1920. That's a critical fucking year. Why is that critical? Because under Reconstruction, black women, thank you, black women, created the public school system and got our literacy to goddamn near 100%. And Rockefeller saw that as a threat to him. Why? I don't know. Like Wani said, it had nothing to do with his lineage. He's German. We're American. What the fuck that got to do with you? Well, he infiltrated education, which is my area of expertise, and he infiltrated medicine. Education obviously is a threat because it educates people. That's self-explanatory. Medicine, that's a threat because question mark. Don't know. Well, Rockefeller, what did he do? He changed his foundation changed, infiltrated schools, created schools, like I just said, and changed the system of education from education to indoctrination. On a scientific level, let me tell you something very peculiar. His foundation changed the periodic table. I read that the periodic table used to have another element. You want to know what that element was? The element was ether. Y'all ever heard of that? Why is that not on the periodic table? I don't know. I'm asking. Maybe somebody in here can educate me because I want to be educated. Well, back to black folks, Rockefeller. Let me drop a bomb right quick. Actually, let me drop a fucking thermonuclear bomb. Feminism is in our title, right? I accidentally, or maybe the spirit of Kevin Samuels played it while I was on the way to work today. But Kevin Samuels came up on my playlist and just started playing when I was in my truck. And I just started listening because I like that song, that song to be on his stuff, the I'm the good life because I got swept up into it. And I was listening to Kevin talk about how feminism fucking destroyed the black community. And which I'm sure everybody here will agree with. We'll talk about that later on. But let me tell you some shit. According to my studies, feminism was signal boosted big time in the '60s vis-a-vis Spelman College. Y'all heard of that school? Well, do you know who Spelman was? That was Rockefeller's mama. He donated money to Spelman to, yeah, buddy, with an agenda. Got me? According to Dr. Howard Zinn, Joel Spring in his book Education and the Rise of the Corporate State says, quote, the development of a factory like system in the 19th century schoolroom was not accidental. Y'all heard what I just said? This continued into the 20th century when William Bagley's classroom management became a standard teacher training text, reprinted 30 times. Bagley said, quote, one who studies educational theory, all right, can see the mechanical routine in the classroom of the educative forces that are slowly transforming the child from a little savage into a creature of law and order, fit for the life of civilized society. Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop said, is it civilization or barbarism? I go with the latter. Why is that important? Like I said before, black women and black scholars was creating an educational system that was changing the world and changing us, got our literacy to 100%, created the Dr. Kings, created the Booker T. Washingtons, it created real leaders. And in my view, Somebody had to do something about that because these foundational Black Americans are not supposed to be leaders. We're supposed to fit into a system, mind you, a system that is fucking destroying us right now. Did you find it, one?
Yes. So when you were saying how far did they go back, that's a very good question because when you go back to the Caspian steppe where all these people are hanging out on the steppe, a lot of these people are borderline Asian, you know, and they borderline Siberian, borderline. They're kind of hanging out with the Mongolians a little too much for my blood. They don't seem very white. They're up there doing a lot of not white things, but at some point, they started to move down around 2500 BCE, 2500 to 2000 BCE. They got tired of beating each other up there because they were pimp slapping each other big time. They were riding around on horses with bows and arrows, even the girls just acting a fool.
Killing.
Yeah, you're just bow and arrowing each other up there. So they said, you know what, I got to get the hell up out of here. So they started dispersing. Now, I'm just going to read off some of the different groups. Proto-Scandinavians, Proto-Balts, Proto-Germanics, ancestors of the Celts, Proto-Celts, Proto-Balkans, which is different than Balts, um, Proto-Slavs, and Proto-Greeks, and Proto-Italics. They were all up there, not being those identities yet. They were just a mix of a lot of things. And then they started to move out. But so when you see how many people are Germanic, when they started to move to these different areas, so the English people are a mixture of Anglo-Saxons, a Germanic tribe, and other influences like Celtic and Norman. Um, Dutch people, Germanic. Scotch people, Scots are largely Anglo-Saxon and some Norse who were Germanic. So they have little pieces of it. Danish people are from Germanic tribes. Swedes, Norwegians, Icelanders. I'm going to skip some of these. Flemish people, they're Germanic as well. Austrians, people from Luxembourg, Swiss people, Belgians, um, they have different influences, but they're Germanic as well. And then of course Vikings, Goths, Baltic Germans. They have a lot of different identities. So when we talk about changing our names, look what they did. Look, they can't keep their stuff straight. They're Germanic, but if you ask them, no, I'm Danish. I don't have anything to do with Germans. No, not Germans. You have something to do with the Germanic people. It's completely different. Germanic is not Germans. Germanic is a lot of different types of identities. And like I said, they were living rough when you compare the way they were living to the Greco Roman Empire. The Greco Roman Empire, they were living like they were living because they were heavily influenced by Egypt and other more advanced places. They had all kinds of advanced philosophy and music and things that the other groups just did not have that kind of development. The architecture, the way of, having your food, a lot of things that we do today are because of the Greco-Roman Empire influenced by Egypt. But we get a direct shot from the Greco-Roman Empire, even the way that we prepare our food, the way that we, like some of the process, the techniques of cheese making and having different things on the plate in a certain way, you'd be surprised that they held on to those things. And there was actually, when you think about food preparation, French people come into view, but it's very ironic because um, when the people in the Gaul region got angry with the Romans and said, "Get out." They said, "No, we're going back to our rustic food. We don't want to eat this fancy Greco-Roman crap. We want our rustic big piece of bread in our stew back. We don't like your culture. And then ultimately the French people gave up and they're the head of all the food in the world. You're like, why are they in charge? Why do they have the Michelin star? Why are they so important? Because they adopted the Greco-Roman techniques and they perfected it. They don't have the greatest food. We're not, no, I never heard anybody say, I gotta get me some French food. I mean, no, never heard that before, have you? People want to get some
Other than French
Chinese,
fries.
people don't say that. They don't have the greatest food, but they do have very good food techniques. They really do.
Very fascinating. Let's see, Twizzle, you know quite a bit about this. Educate us. Where are these people from?
Yes, indeed. Professor, I just sent you something in your DMs. Check it out.
Okay.
And that is a receipt right there. You know what I'm saying? And when you put it up, I will gladly explain it to everybody. But shout out to you, Professor.
Send it to me so I can put it up because sometimes he can't see it. I just want to help. I just want to help him.
Okay, I'll send it to you right now as we speak. But shout out to you, Professor. Shout out to you, Nikki. Sister Wani,
Hey,
what's
honey.
up with you, bad girl? What are you doing, Wani?
What you mean?
You done ran off all the Caribbeans, you done ran off the Africans, now you're Bohemian hunting now, Sister
I
Wani?
I didn't do anything.
Oh no, you tell that to somebody else. This is Twizzle. I was there with you. I was in the paint. But I just want to say, Sister Wani, if you're bohemian hunting right now, I just want to let you know I got a bucket of sauerkraut right now. So we can go on a good hunt. And
Oh
I think
no,
we gonna
that's not
score
good.
real good. You know what I'm
Mm,
saying?
I don't like bohemian food. That's not good.
No, I'm just saying, if we're
But
going
tell us.
bohemian hunting, you know what I'm saying? We got some sauerkraut to lure them in, you know what I mean?
Oh
We
Lord.
got sauerkraut as bait, you know what I mean? Because you know them Germans, they love their sauerkraut and their cabbage, you know what I'm saying? But
Now,
yeah,
don't you agree, Twizzle, that the French people have all of the techniques down because they adopted it from the Greco-Romans, but their food, like they know how to prepare the food, like the cheese sauces and the pastries and this and that. But when we really get ready to have a meal, that's when it's like, okay, I'd rather have some other style of food. What's up
the
with that?
French are more,
Hold on. Y'all
the
don't
Fr-
like French snails, y'all?
hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. The
No.
French cuisine, they're more known for their presentation more than anything.
Facts.
And when they talk about French cuisine, is that's why they're in competition with Italy, Sister Wani and Sister Wani. Sister Wani is 100% correct because, as they said, in the big, as there's an essence, there's always a beginning, and they got a lot of their, you know what I'm saying, style, a lot of their flavors from them. Because if you gotta understand, the French, that area, they got hit by the Moors when the Moors came through in 711. So they spawned a lot of their culture too. The Moors had a lot to do with them too. When they came through Spain, they came through southern France. That's a come when you look at a lot of French history, they have a lot of black people in antiquity, and a lot of their coat of arms have a lot of black people on there as well. But once we get to the culinary aspect of it, can't nobody cook like black people, and don't nobody have the taste buds as us. And as some of those so-called Romans and all them, they were kind of so-called have dark skin in them and melanin in them. They had a certain unique flavor. Now with the cheese cultivating, I don't know who started that first, but I know through my history and through my research, the rice and the wheat, the whites and the wheat, that came from Egypt. You know what I mean? It came from Egypt before it came to Greece and Constantinople and through Rome. When people fail to realize this, and
Rice?
they don't rice, wheat, all of that.
Yeah, that was
Because
China.
Egypt had vast rice fields as well. They got stories about the rice fields around Egypt, around the pyramids and stuff like that too, Queen Yanni. I read stories about that. I read stories about this in the BC area about the vast rice fields that was around Egypt that they cultivated with wheat. You know what I'm saying? Now you could say Asia, but whatever. But I know when I read a story about when Egypt was called Manifa, when it was called Memphis, the story of Memphis and all that. That's when they talked about the rich rice fields and the rich rice fields that they had around there at the time. You know what I'm saying?
Interesting. I
Yes.
looked up some Egyptian food, ancient Egyptian, and I wasn't, it looked weird. They had some sort of cookbook. Couldn't make heads or tails of it. Maybe I'll look it up, look at another one just to
Yeah.
double check on what they're eating. But it's just odd because the that area of France was under the Roman control. And so they had them using all their techniques. The cheese making is very old and it's from multiple groups. Okay, so it's not one source. And the same thing with fermented drinks, like different beers, a lot of cultures, fermented drinks. Well, it's very interesting that human beings have come up with these different things and they're not even related to each other. They
You
just,
said something that made me just think about something. Who was the first to cultivate wheat?
I have no idea. I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, that's very interesting because once we cultivated wheat, everything else came from that. You know what I'm saying? But with the French, they kind of like call themselves the innovator of the culinary cuisine. That's why, like, when a lot of people want to study the culinary arts, they study in America, then they do their internship over there in Europe. They either go to France or they either go to Italy, to Tuscany, Naples, or Milan. They like to do it around there, but their
Study
food sucks.
gastronomy.
Yeah, their food sucks to me because I didn't cook for chefs all across the country, and I done made everything from a bolognese to a bechamel, all kind of sauce. I done made my own pastas and everything, and they tell me I make the shit better than the recipe. And as I tell everybody, as us black people, as us being the original people, our taste buds are way more vast than everybody else. That's a come. We can eat things different than everybody else, but we can pick up on we can pick up on certain flavors and certain tastes than other people can't. They can eat something that don't have salt and pepper or anything on it. They think that's the best shit out. But then once we season it and put a little something on it, they'll eat it and they'll probably have like a fucking culinary or food orgasm. As Anthony Bourdain would say, straight food porn moment. You know what I'm saying? That's how it
Now,
is.
I looked it up, and the wheat was first cultivated in the Fertile Crescent region of the Middle East.
Hmm. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I'm just saying with the French, they kind of like claim it, but they broke off and what they call themselves specialized in. They specialize in pastries, wine, and cheese, as you say. So when you go to France, the only thing you want to go eat is a bonbon, a croissant, or have some wine and cheese or a baguette. You know what I mean? And that's the only thing they're famous for. But other than that, they don't have a famous beef. They don't have a particular cuisine other than, like you say, their escargot, their snails. They're not really none. They just have like a form of cooking to where they so-called teach people the art because it's called culinary art. It's an art
Mm-hmm.
form to where you express food in your way, your vision on how you see it, you know? And just pray to God you hope people like it because when I used to cook for people, boy, I used to be shitting bricks, scared to death, sweating like I was being judged for my life in the courtroom. But that's why it's called the culinary art form because you're expressing yourself through food. You know what I'm saying? But you have to be careful with it because some people can get hooked and some people can criticize you with it. But in cooking, constructive criticism is just like a motivation to push you forward, you know. And I say the French, the only thing they're good for is their baking, their pastries, their wine, and their so-called cheese and grapes in their fucking bag. With them hats called their berets. You
Croissants.
know what I'm saying? And
Beret.
yeah, that's it. But other than that, Italian. When I went to culinary school, I specialized in Italian. Well, I specialize in Italian because I love pastas and everything. But when I graduated, I came up with my own fusion. I called it California soul food. I specialize in Italian,
I
Chinese
love it.
food, Mexican food, and soul food. And I confuse all of them into one. So if you want to say anything of those, I can make them for you right then and there. And I bet you I can make it better than the recipe. You know what I'm saying?
Hey
Shout out to the
Twizzle,
room, man.
hey Twizzle, you need to open some restaurants, man. Like some fusion
I'm
restaurants
kind of through with cooking, bro.
for real.
Next year be 30 years, bro, and I'm kind of through with it. I remember my OG when I got into the game in '96. He told me be careful. I asked him why. He said because when I got in the game, he been in the game 30 years, and he said he seen more waitresses and bartenders buy houses than chefs. And to this day, he ain't never lied. You know what I'm saying? And when the pandemic hit us, it kind of hit us the hard because we got hit in the hospitality industry, and it was like, well, we expect people to, y'all got to go into other things, and it hit me like, damn, I've been cooking my whole life. I don't know nothing else. So I had to teach myself something else. So that's why I'm in real estate, man. So I'm 2.5 years into it. And this is on my 5-year plan, and this is what I'm going with. You know what I'm saying? So, cooking is a notch under my belt. If I ever need to go back to it, boom, I can go get a food truck like that and have clientele like I was, like I'm Eric Sherman, the Green Eye Bandit. You know what I'm saying? But thanks to everybody and shout out to all y'all. And I appreciate y'all. And if I do get some, y'all gonna be the first ones to know. Y'all gonna be the first ones that got first dibs and first taste. And some of y'all, I'm gonna fly y'all out to California just so y'all can eat it first. You know what I'm saying? Love to the family. I land my plane.
Hey, no doubt, man. I
Mhm.
appreciate you, Twizzle.
I was gonna say, back to what we were speaking about the feminists. So the feminists are another group of people that jumped on a wagon that had nothing to do with what they were talking about. So they obviously saw the suffragist and the women's rights movement, which were honorable pursuits. They were trying to be able to manage their money, vote, get educated, and normal things that women were deprived of doing. So they took that um, and latched their wagon onto it, but they're really not a woman's rights movement. What they are is a sexology movement. They're just a
A
knockoff.
weapon.
Yeah, they're a knockoff of the sexology that Freud was talking about, not conforming. This school, the Frankfurt School from guess where, Germany, uh,
Wow.
they were all about freedom from conformity. And so all of these Freudian sexology people, they don't want to conform. Of course, a feminist is saying, I don't want to do women's things. I don't want to have to cook and clean and be expected to have children or rear children. I want other options. So they don't have anything to do with women's rights. They're just a persistent group of people that latched on to the women's rights. In fact, people, you know, they think that that's women's rights, and it's not, because if you're trying to get a right, you get the right and you shut the hell up, right? You don't keep a whole group forever talking and yakking about it when you've already gotten those rights. Everything else is a lawsuit. If I go to a job and I'm doing the same job as a man and I find out he's making $100,000 a year and I'm making $30,000 a year, we have the same job. I don't need to belong to a feminist group. I just need to get a lawyer. Okay. So we have laws to help people to get some of the equality that they were trying to get. The feminist group is really just a low, it's kind of like a persistent group of people that don't want to conform. And it's also a gateway to LGBTQ. They go hand in hand with LGBTQ because they're not doing anything. They're just hating on men. And that's a great place for a bunch of women that don't like men to hang out. They're not productive. They are not doing anything and they haven't done anything, because if you want something done, that's women's rights. That's not feminism. Okay, it's a completely different thing. To have a woman's right, I don't need to have a septum ring. I don't need to have purple hair. I don't need to be a Democrat. I'm just saying that, hey, I would like to have a bank account. I'd like to be educated. I'd like to be able to vote. Those things are not a lifestyle. And they have changed women's rights into a lifestyle and a look, an aesthetic, and a lot of things, and all of them negative, because what are they doing? And if you question them on it, they'll say, well, the women over in Brazil are being treated bad. You're not in Brazil. Let these other women fight their fights. I mean, they'll jump way over to some other country. If I say, what are you doing? Well, the women in the Middle East, really?
Well, feminism, as we've identified and Wani just backed up and put a foundation in place on it, is a weapon. Um, and as Wani identified, is a weapon of psychological warfare of Germanic origin. Now, why do black people give a fuck? Well, we give a fuck because um, in the 50s, we were intact. Our family was intact. Ladies and gentlemen, family is everything. It's everything. Nothing matters without family. Family is a basic unit of a nation, right? And black foundational Black Americans' family was damn near destroyed by feminism. Now they bring up drugs and all these other reasons; those were contributing factors. But the main destructive ideology, the main destructive weapon against the Black family was feminism. Now, earlier I proved to you that Rockefeller created schools, and what, as history proves, a lot of the world's most deadly, dangerous weapons came from these schools. For instance, Rockefeller established University of Chicago. This is not allegedly, this is factual. The nuclear weapon came from the Manhattan Project, which was a misnomer to throw off people, throw off enemies of the state, because it wasn't made in Manhattan. It was made at the Department of Physics in University of Chicago, which he established, right? But let's look at feminism. Well, before we get to feminism, also Leland Stanford University was created. What weaponized ideology allegedly came from Stanford University? How about standardized testing? Does that work for Black Americans? No. Does it help identify intelligent people? Hell no. In graduate school, in a PhD course I took at in graduate school, I learned that allegedly, Leland Stanford University created the Stanford Achievement. That's it, SAT, Stanford Achievement, to allegedly exclude foundational Black Americans from, top 10 in Ivy League colleges. A lot of scholars, including myself, believe this. Now let's get to the point, because I kind of went around a circle to talk about the point. The point is feminism. How did it get to the Black community? Again, how did feminism get to the Black community again? Well, let's go to Spelman. Who is Spelman? I told you Spelman was named after Rockefeller's mama. Let's listen to what Dr. Howard Zinn had to say about feminism and Spelman. On page 504 of Dr. Howard Zinn's book, he says, quote, "In the civil rights movement of the 60s, signs of a collective stirring began to appear. Women took the place they customarily took in social movements and the front lines as privates, not generals. In the Office of Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in Atlanta," I will want to point out, there goes that word again, nonviolent, but we'll talk about that another day. A, a Spelman College student named Ruby Doris Smith, who had been jailed during sit-ins, expressed her anger at the way women were relegated to the routine office work. She was joined in her protest by two white women in SNCC, Sandra Hayden and Mary King. What am I saying? I'm saying that somebody was playing a chess game with Spelman and Spelman College, because back then, as now, Spelman College and Morehouse historically create a lot of prominent Black leaders. There's a culture I know from alumni, there's a culture at Morehouse that college degree is not going to be it. You're expected to go to law school, grad school, medical school, and the like, and to lead the Black community. Well, a leader was selected at Spelman University to spread feminism in the Black community, and it spread like wildfire. Here's a problem. It never had shit to do with us. The Black man, according to Dr. Shahrazad Ali, never had control over the Black woman. It was none of our goddamn business. But social engineers got us caught up in that shit. And that shit, being feminism, destroyed the Black community.
Here's one of the things. A lot of times we get caught up with these other groups because they're leeches and parasites, and they keep latching themselves onto us and morphing themselves. Like this group called the Beat Movement, headed by a man named Irwin Allen Ginsberg. And they coined the phrase flower power. They were latched onto us. They were like, oh, we need civil rights too, so we can, um, you know, they were advocating for being obscene, advocating for promiscuity, advocating for drug use. They wanted to use all the drugs, psychedelics. They were advocating for feminism. They were advocating anti American ideals. They were advocating for a lot of things that don't have anything to do with us. And they latched on our wagon. And guess what? Because of low self esteem, we let them join. We're just happy that somebody wants to join us. We don't need to do that anymore because that's been our downfall. Being happy that Africans want to be involved, or happy that, white people want to dance to our music, or happy that a white person, whether they be Jewish or whatever, wants to help us with civil. We don't need any help. They helped themselves. They helped themselves to our voice, and they put a lot of filth on our name. We did not come into this civil rights um, theater talking about crazy types of sex we want to have. We were saying, please stop lynching us. Please stop attacking us. We want to live in peace. We didn't come into this trying to change around the morals and the ethics. This is what these other people are doing. They don't like America. They want to have pornography. They want to fight in court so they can have violent pornography and say that's freedom of speech. Just like Uncle Luke. Okay. He did the same thing. I want to be able to be vulgar. I'm going to use your freedom of speech rules to get my way. Okay. So these are all ideas of the beatniks, hippies, and they're all blended in. The feminists are all blended in with these groups because they get together like Voltron and make themselves bigger, like the LGBTQ. The LGB wants to get rid of the T, but they got real big when they Voltroned up together. But now they don't like the results of that, do they? Because now
Yeah,
everybody's
they
mad
don't like
at
each
them.
other.
Everybody's mad at them now and don't want them to be nothing. They want them to shut the hell up. But they were weaker when they were separated. They Voltroned up and got very powerful, and now they're being torn apart because one of them got a little bit too radical. Some of those letters got out of pocket. Anyway, that's how we keep getting involved because they keep stealing our words. We say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud, and black pride, and they say pride parade.
Hmm.
Okay. And then some guy creates a rainbow flag about getting rid of the war, about peace, and they grab onto that and turn it into gay stuff that has nothing to do
One,
with it.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna
That's what
quickly.
Miss. Yeah. Go ahead.
I want to quickly say on before Nikki goes that Wani, that's happening right now. Is it me or are other groups trying their best to call themselves foundational? Am I hallucinating that, or is that
They're
happening?
copying for every no, they are. They've been saying that. They're not foundational if they're here. Their foundation has to be somewhere else. So we can have some early settlers that are foundational, but everybody else is just an immigrant here.
I wanted to give, if we're going to go on to the hands, after Professor speaks, I wanted to give Twizzle a chance to explain this picture that he sent after Professor speaks.
Yeah, I'm done. We can go to Twizzle then. I think it was Cash Gains, Melancholy, Taylor, and Highland. Go ahead, Twizzle.
Yes, yes, indeed. What's up? What's up? Man, Professor, man, you be cooking so goddamn much, man. You have a person really patient, man. It's no thing, man. You know what I mean? Like, what do you say? In the kitchen, we can whip it like a stir fry. You know what I mean? But yeah, that, ladies and gentlemen, I greet you and I ask you to look in the Jumbotron and glance at that picture, what you see, and if you may have to tap into it and zoom into it, what you see before you right there is a picture that was painted in the 1400s. And that picture was named and noted Moors driving out of the wild men, and that is in Germany in the 15th century, aka the 1400s. You know what I'm saying? And when you zoom in on a picture to the right, you will see black men in antiquity in a castle with bow and arrows with the Moorish trait with the white scarf around their head, with bow and arrows fighting off what you see is white men, and you see them with all kind of marks on them. But what those marks are, that's their hair that they're covered in. And when you see what's in their hand, what they're fighting with sticks and clubs. But what's so significant about this picture is it's another picture that goes in antiquity about them called the Woodworths, the wild men of Europe. The wild men of Europe were white men who were dressed in all white. I mean, they were covered in hair from hair to toe, what we call Bigfoot right now. And Wani, they was all throughout Germanic, all through Bohemia, through Poland, throughout France, throughout, all throughout that area. They were the wild men because, once wild men, white men are like pigs. Once they got cast down to the wild, they would go wild. They would become uncivilized. You know what I'm saying? And they would lose all sense. They will lose form of language. They will lose form of communication. They will lose their humanity. You know what I'm saying? And when you look at that picture, that's what they were, the wild men. You know what I'm saying? And that's what the Germanics were. That's a famous picture in Germany right there. That's because when you see a lot of German coats of arms, you see those black men that you see on there right now, the ones that got rid of the wild men of Europe, the wild men of Germany, the Bohemians, you know what I mean? The slag jaws, you know what I'm saying? That's what that picture is, and that's our receipt for them right there. So I land my plane right there, y'all.
Bro, I ain't heard slack jaw since Predator. Yeah, yep. Those of you who remember that scene on the chopper. Go ahead, Cash.
Get to the chopper. What up,
What up,
Professor
bro?
Alon? Nikki, Wani in the spot. Everybody who's eligible for reparations down below, you already know, as zeros. Hey, so first of all, Professor Alon, you was mentioning the standardized testing. I seen a movie recently that was about like an Asian chick, quote unquote, tutoring white folks when really she was just giving them the answers. And she was so creative that she was coming up with ways to beat the standardized test. And for the SAT, she flew to like a state up ahead as far as time zones so that she could text back the answers. And then it was multiple different versions of the SAT. It's crazy how far people will go not to just actually be educated. But it just got me thinking about that movie. I think it's called Bad Genius. And I
Bro,
was talking about,
I saw that happen when I was in law school. Law school is very difficult, obviously, but it was harder than I thought it was going to be, and it's pull your hair out hard. And I met a female, and we had an acquaintance. I had broke up with my girlfriend, and me and this female,
It's always a woman.
always a woman, and she was from the dominant society, and I was, I had a little fling, but we were on the elevator going to class. She went to class with me. I went part time at night, and they were the white students were passing around paper. Like, what the fuck is this? And she gave it to me. Like, here you go, you can have one. And I walked down the hallway and opened it. It was the answers to the test. So they be having little hookups like that, man. While we fucking go outright, we go insane in school. They got their little systems, man. But that's all I wanted to say. Cash, go ahead.
it was stressful because they had a whole lot of people waiting who were planning to go take the SAT. They was sitting in their cars. I ain't gonna run the movie, but anyways. And then y'all was talking about food. I consider myself traveled a bit. I ain't, what I'm saying, on the spot. But I remember a Japanese presentation of food was something that stood out to me. In France, which I've been to like, I don't know, 15 times or something. And I'm a vegetarian now, but at the time, they were always all about their desserts as well. In fact, their breakfasts are all kind of like sweetened and tarts and stuff like that. So it's a lot of like desserts for breakfast. But fromage, yeah, their cheeses and all that. Don't order the fromage pizza. That shit's got cheese all over it, man. It's way too much for me. To the point I started not liking cheese because of the French. Uh, um, German food's even worse, and that's to the title. I've been to Germany. Käsebrot. Ugh. Hey, but let me pin the tail real quick, if I may. I don't know if y'all already spoke on some other stuff that they created, but since Cory Booker is trying to get an award for the filibuster, which to me is a stain, not an achievement. Let's give some achievements to these Germans, but also stain them at the same time. The first genocide of the 20th century was Germans when they invaded Africa, specifically Namibia. I had never really seen a genocide that had two ethnicities listed in it at the same time. Right? Like normally it's divide and conquer, damn, but like they genocided the Herero and the Nama people kind of at the same time. So they wasn't taking no prisoners. Shark Island, which was an island off the coast of Namibia, they tortured people and sent them there to die, and it was surrounded by sharks and had no space for them to grow fruit or vegetables or nothing on. And some say that the torture methods they used against the Namibians are the same ones they used in the Holocaust. But let me just mention one more part in between that, though. The Great War or World War I didn't just happen in Europe, right? It also happened on the continent. Germans who forced the Namibians that were still left after the genocides or the genocide of multiple peoples, they forced them to fight because they were considered Germans, right, against the South African British folks. So they really had Africans fighting Africans. After that, if you fought in World War I, you got citizenship as a German, and some of them made it back to Germany by the time Hitler was democratically elected in 1922. Later on, they became some of the first people to lose their citizenship in Germany and become beasts with no nation. These Afro Germans, it's a whole Wikipedia on them, and they were the first people put in the Holocaust camps, y'all. What? And then after that, it was the homosexuals, people that spoke against the state, and then the final solution was the segregated Jewish population, the
Facts.
self-segregated Jewish population, right? So I'm just saying that to say it's crazy to me a timeline of history where Germans could torture people in their own land, force them to fight in the World War I, the Great War, bring them back to Germany to then put them in the Holocaust camps. Crazy. I don't think anybody in human history has ever genocided a person twice in two generations, like quite like that. So I just wanted to shout them out for uniquely doing something that evil.
And don't forget, the Belgian people are Germanic. They can get a new cute little name if they want to. And they went over there, of course, got involved with the Congolese and had them killing themselves. So yeah, they're very murderous.
Credo Mutwa was I forget the name of his order, but he was from modern day. What's it called? I guess it's Zimbabwe now, but it used to be called Rhodesia. And Credo was in a very ancient order of men who were taught mystics, almost similar to the mystery school. But quickly, Credo, before he died, David Icke has a really good special on him. I like David Icke, but Credo said that these people, these Germanic people, um, under a group I'm gonna briefly talk about, very briefly and momentarily, went on an escapade across the world looking for ancient secrets. And Credo said they went through what is called Africa. I'm not sure if that's the real name for the continent, but I digress. Killing people who knew stuff, like getting information, writing it down, and killing them. Graham Hancock backs that up with the Catholic Church going to South America, learning secrets from the Mayans who were related to the Egyptians, um, gathering scholarship, gathering information, gathering mystic and spiritual secrets, gathering technology, um, writing it down, archiving it, and then killing the people, brutally murdering the people that they stole it from. So I'm saying that to say a lot of technology that Europeans get credit for really belongs to us. History is critical, ladies and gentlemen, because if we look at history, we'll see that the world we live in now is one big finesse. I think it was a Melancholy and then Taylor, and we'll go to Holland. I think that says Melon. What does that say? Melancholy Tiff.
Melancholy.
Hey, Melancholy Tiff, can you hear me? Melancholy, you there? Going once, going twice. We'll come back to you. Go ahead, Taylor. T. Taylor.
Oh my God, they all fell asleep.
Brother T. Taylor, can you hear me? Going once, Going twice. Go ahead, Highland.
How you doing, big dog? Appreciate everybody, the host, co-host, listeners, and speakers. I was just gonna say, I posted something in the Pearl Pill, basically like Wani was saying earlier, how other groups kind of latched onto our movement. It was about a shark and the other smaller sharks. But I'm gonna end and make it quick because I don't like speaking that much. But I just want to say, every one of y'all are appreciated, even if you think you're not. If you have one listener in a space, 100 or even 1 million, just know you're appreciated. And I'm gonna land there.
Yeah, I always appreciate you, Highland. We're gonna go to housing. Go ahead, housing. Go ahead, brother Housing. It's good to see you.
Hey, housing.
Hey, hello everyone. You know, I shout out to everybody in the room. I lock in, but I just fall asleep because I got to get up early. But anyway, I have a couple of questions, and one thing I want to add to what y'all guys talking about, Wani and Professor, the Germanics, those guys right there, are they responsible for what's going on, like when it comes to the Pope as well? Are they connected to them as too?
Yes.
Uh,
The papacy was founded by Germanics.
Uh-oh.
Whoa. And I'm bringing it to the movies now. All the Avenger movies, right? The Winter Soldier, when you talked about how they stimulate them with drugs to make them, real strong and don't care about nothing. They show you on Winter Soldier how they do it.
What are
The
what do they
the
show?
Avenger. If you ever seen that, the Winter Soldier,
Never seen it.
everything is taking place in Germany.
Wow.
They were torturing dude while they would call out certain words in a language he didn't understand,
Yes,
so that when they put him in America and released him, he heard those that they played over a loudspeaker, and they only knew that because it's Russian, he wouldn't hear just an American conversation in that order, and it triggered him to just lash out at people because he didn't want to be tortured anymore. He went back to that mental state.
Yeah, and also Wonder Woman 2. It takes place in Germany.
So it just to fill that other part in, the Papal States were established in 756 when Pepin the Short, king of the Franks, king of the Franks, granted territories in central Italy. And yeah, that's why a lot of the popes have been Germanic. And that's why the Pope at the time was buddy with Hitler, doing the Heil Hitler with him. Everybody was very happy over there being evil and on drugs.
So they got their foot in everybody's back, in other words.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I was saying before, they have this these waves of them taking over. They haven't stopped. Like we're still we've been colonized by these people.
Right.
The Queen of England is still German. She changed her name to Windsor because everybody got on her ass because of fighting with Germany. And they were saying, hey, your cousins are bombing us. You've got people married to some of these SS men. What is going on? They got on her ass, and she was like, oh, my new name is Windsor. They just think they can just rename themselves and move, and they can be other people. I guess that's why they have a lot of the immigrants thinking they can do that. They can just change their name and move and do all these things, and they're no longer German. No, she'll be German forever. So are her grandsons, and so is everybody else over there. They're
Yeah.
all German,
Do,
Germanic.
I have one more question. I'm gonna land my plane. Do you see a fourth wave? Because I know you mentioned one, two,
Yes, we're
three
in it. We're in it now. Now,
right
see,
now.
they've already colonized the crap out of everybody, so they can't physically colonize us because we're already colonized. They already own everything. They already make you get a license to fish. They already tax your house.
Preach.
They already own the sky. They already tell you you can't go into a park unless you pay a fee. They
Preach.
already have us by the things.
By the kahunas.
Yeah. So therefore, The only way to colonize us is to do it mentally. Get all up in our schools, twist our minds around, tell everybody they're feminists. And then they fight back and go, oh no, I'm not a feminist. That's a white woman's thing. I'm a womanist. Oh, shut up. Just please. That's their uh way to rebel against being a feminist is to say that they're a womanist now. That's ridiculous. Again, they have used a lot of psychological things and they've pumped a lot of drugs into society. They've created these drugs and somehow these drugs end up all over the place. Okay? Just because you've isolated something and created it, you could keep it within a medical setting. Why is it on the corner? Because they put it on the corner. That's why they want it on the corner. They want all of these things, these harmful things to be around. They want you to be a drug addict. They want you to be a drunk. They want you to be a feminist idiot. They want you to have indoctrination for your education. You are in a war. They're doing a
Facts.
psychological wave now, and we have to just fight against it. They want to be all on the commercials. They control the media. Yes, they tell you that you're a loser if you don't have certain things. They got you, and you
Got
have
you,
to
man.
you have
I
to
land my
fight back
plane.
against it. That's it. That's our job. We have a part-time job of fighting back against that fourth wave while being under a third
Yep.
wave.
To back of what Wani says, according to Dr. Howard Zinn on page 263 at the bottom, he says, quote, it was in the middle and late 19th century that high schools developed as aids to the industrial systems. Stop right there. High schools had nothing to do with education. They were aids to make people ready to work for the machine. But I digress. He also says, quote, that history was widely required in the curriculum to foster patriotism. Bam, there it is. And I experienced this 10 years ago when I got a master's degree in educational psychology and start teaching on secondary level. I was confused because I read a lot and I like history, and the curriculum that I was teaching in had nothing to do with the truth. I was so confused that I left history and went to physics for a little while. But that, when I read Dr. Zinn's book again, I got it. History serves a function in our schools. It's the function of history in public schools is indoctrination. It has nothing to do with the truth. It has to do with brainwash. Dr. Zinn further says loyalty oaths, teacher certification, and the requirement of citizenship were introduced to control both the educational and the political quality of teachers. Also, in the later part of the century, school officials, not teachers, were given control over textbooks. Laws passed by states barred certain kinds of textbooks. In Idaho and Montana, for instance, forbade textbooks propagating political doctrines, and Dakota Territory ruled that school libraries could not have partisan political pamphlets or books. The educational system has nothing to do with education, which is why when that everybody in the education world is freaking out over what Trump's doing. You know what? Even though it's been paying the bills, I don't have no problem with it. Maybe it's time for something new. But I digress. The black. What's on your mind? Go ahead, the black.
What's going on, Professor Nikki, Warner, everybody in the space? Uh, to the subject of the room, did Germanic people create narcotics, psyops, and feminism and weapons of mass destruction? Yeah, yeah, they did, and a whole lot of other debauchery things that they try to hide over the years. Uh, I was watching this documentary. Y'all know I like documentaries. That's the only way I can kind of like dismantle the narrative because over years they changed certain storylines, and the fact that we get our education system from them, the Prussian model, and then they renamed their countries and realigned their borders, and then brought a different type of ideology. It makes me feel like the since Benjamin Franklin didn't like these Germanic groups of people, and they have always been like considered barbarians to other European tribes. It makes me feel like these people are somewhat kind of like their name, they're germs. Uh, and they infect other people with negative ideologies and ways of life to destroy civilizations. Because when you infiltrate a group and you add different ideologies that's against their customs, they begin to infight, and then they come around and clean up the pieces. And I kind of understand why a lot of people don't want them in their countries. So it's just interesting to see that most of our education and the things that we hold up high comes from them, but they they also create most of the negative things that we try to get away from. So it's like a catch 22 when you deal with those type of people.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Further illustrating how the educational system was took over, Dr. Howard Zinn says that quote in February 27th, 1880, a petition of 258 parents and guardians at the Throp School in New York, signed by over half the taxpayers at the school district, said petitioners have just as much right to request the teaching of Bohemian as to have German citizens to have German taught in the public schools. In opposition to this, Mr. Vogt claims that there's a great deal of difference between Germans and Bohemians, or in other words, they are superior. The Germans took over the school system in New York. It was a plan.
Didn't Bohemian mean like a eccentric, somewhat mixed person that didn't have like a stable lineage identity?
It's a weird word because it got associated with Roma people because they were nomadic and they had this so-called romantic lifestyle. And they started calling it like bohemian, but it really was French artist. And then some guy wrote about it and included these gypsy type people involved in it. And then it became like a mecca for artistic people, weird people, people that were ethnic groups in, and they created them in Paris. They have one in London, and they had it in Greenwich Village, New York, and other places, wherever the immigrants were, or whenever the, people that were living an artistic lifestyle, so to speak. But see, that's the difference. We can have an artistic movement, but it doesn't have anything to do with sex. So we had the Harlem Renaissance. That's about art. That's not about debauchery and wanting to not conform and having sex with children and doing all kinds of movies that have teenagers having sex and having Brooke Shields in a hot tub at 8 years old. That's what they call art. That's it, bohemian art. And it's, they put up a display of Brooke Shields in Paris because they thought it was bohemian to do so. And the people in France said that's too much. The girl is 7, 8 years old and she's naked in a hot tub, and you think that's art. That's why they're harboring Roman Polanski, who raped a young girl.
Pedophile.
Yeah, they're harboring him because of the bohemian mentality. So they have a situation where anything goes. Anything goes. It's borderlining on do as thou wilt, isn't it?
So
Yes.
is that why most of these bohemian clubs had bathhouses or had most of their meetings at bathhouses?
Well, yeah, they're into all of that type of thing. And then remember Bohemian Grove, what they were doing out there, we don't even want to know. Moloch was involved.
Yeah, and I don't usually talk about this much. You know, I tread lightly with it. Wow, I grabbed the book and went right to the page. And a very interesting piece of scholarship by Professor Griff. If y'all can get it, I recommend get it while you can. Professor Griff, along with a school teacher, wrote a book called The Psychological War on Hip Hop. Hard to find. Maybe you can get it on Amazon, maybe. But the history behind this book, Professor Griff said his life was threatened behind it. And also, he wrote it with a school teacher in, I want to say, Detroit. Somebody fact check me on that. But this school teacher's uh, classroom exploded. Like they didn't want this book out. But on page 66, interesting page, huh? Um, Professor Griff talks about Adam Weishaupt. Guess where he was from? Germany. Uh,
Mm.
yeah. Oh, this shit deep. Dr. Professor Griff says in 1784, an act of God placed the Bavarian, there goes that word, Wani, government in possession of evidence were provided the existence of a continuing Luciferian conspiracy. Adam Weishaupt, a Jesuit trained professor. Now, Jesuit, that's associated with the Catholic Church. Professor of canon law, law professor, defected from Christianity and embraced Luciferian ideology while teaching at Ingolstadt University. In 1770, the moneylenders who had recently organized a house of Rothschild, name sound familiar, retained him to revise and modernize the old protocols designed to give the synagogue ultimate world domination. So, synagogue of Satan is what it says. Ultimate world domination, so they can impose Luciferian ideology on what remains of the human race. There it is, one.
No, it's very, I mean, what they're doing with the refusing to conform, going to other people's countries and setting up all of these subcultures. We have a subculture, it's called hip hop. And it doesn't have anything to do with trying to get people to have different types of sex. But whenever they do these subcultures, it has, they have those degenerate hotels where Hitler was hanging around, where gay men frequented, all of those types of things. It always ends up being some weird sex with them, and less art and more sex. And I do notice a similarity because it is a do as thou wilt. We can show children naked on movies. We can, push the line. We can have Jodie Foster be a prostitute on Taxi Driver. We can have, Blue Lagoon. We can do this. They're pushing the envelope all the time. Why? Why are they in somebody's country pushing the
Can I
envelope
can
like
I
that? Go push it over in your
can I
land.
answer that, Wani? According to the book, Wani said, "Why, ladies and gentlemen?" Professor Griff says the plan. The plan required the destruction of all existing governments and religions. This objective was to be reached by dividing the masses into opposing camps in ever increasing numbers on political, racial, social, economic, and other issues. The opposing sides were then to be armed in an incident provided which would cause them to fight and weaken themselves as they destroyed national governments and religious institutions. I think that's a pretty good why.
Yep. And again, do as thou wilt is it's even below animal standards. It's below animal standard. There's no point of having civilization if we're just going to go around doing whatever we want. So they're wrong because they can't exist in civilization. Even animals don't do whatever they want to do.
Interesting.
They eat each other alive, but they don't they that's instinctual. They don't do whatever they want. They do the things that their species have been doing for millions of years. Millions of years. So their belief system is even more savage than an animal.
Wow. I see nothing but a G thing. I'm curious to hear what he has to say, but before he comes up, that was the first single I got when music started to change. It was a cassette tape. I got nothing but a G thing, baby. And when my mama and them found it, I got my ass whooped, boy. Time, that song hard as hell.
I exercise to that every day.
I'm glad somebody remembers it, man. I used to listen to
Yeah,
it over and over and over
I
again.
listen to it every day.
Y'all, and my mama took it and put a piece of, y'all remember how you used to put a little piece in the tape and you could record over it? My mama put a little piece of paper in it and recorded over it and recorded gospel on
Oh, that's
it.
cold.
She
You
got my
try to
ass.
exercise it. I cast thee out, but it pumps up your adrenaline when you're working out.
That song hard as hell. I'm gonna listen to it when we done with the space. Go ahead, go on fishing.
Hey, good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be up here with you lovely people. Salute to the entire chat. Um, I want to address something that you said last night, right? And also, I want to ask Wani a question. Okay, to address your statement last night, have you heard of this book called The New World Order? I think his name is by Ralph Ellison.
I don't know the book, but I know Novo Order Seclorum. I know about it. It's on the dollar bill, and it's part of allegedly is part of Adam Weishaupt's agenda.
Well, he exposed everything, and throughout the book, he also made a statement that if anything happens to him, he didn't commit suicide. I
Wow.
wanted to ask you. I'm sorry. You were saying something?
No, I just said wow.
Oh, okay. Um, remember, like with Paramount, and you have the light bearer standing on top of the top tier step, and you see all of the stars coming up, and they surround her.
Yep.
Wouldn't that happen to be played a part of the light bearer of Lucifer as well?
Yeah, we talked about that last night. Iconography, I think that's the word, was infiltrated on the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty has a torch in her hand. That's a sign of Prometheus.
Right there.
Fire in the
And
tube.
and also Apollo, how they have Apollo facing the church over in Manhattan, right by the World Trade Center, and they believe that it was like them basically confront the house of God. And they also talked about um, oh boy, I can't get my thoughts together.
No,
Um,
you're doing
it
fine.
Okay, because I'm all over the place. But they also talked about like he was facing God. And have you heard of Lucius Trust? That's supposed to be affiliated with Adam Weishaupt. That was supposed to have been affiliated with him also.
Wow.
So it's a lot of stuff. It's Lucius Trust. But I also wanted to bring up. I wanted to ask Wani this question. Do you think that the women that you were talking about, that so-called feminist group, do you think that it was affiliated with a sex rights ritual that Hitler was doing back in I believe the 30s?
You mean
Because
sexual magic?
yes, I got it mixed up. Yes, because there was a rumor that Angela Merkel, the former chancellor of Germany, was supposed to have been Hitler's daughter.
Oh
And,
man.
yeah, there was supposed to have been a rumor about that. So that's why I brought it up. And they also had animal brothels in Germany, all throughout Germany. They had animal brothels with sheep and goats and
I
stuff
heard
like that.
about
Oh
that.
my God.
Yeah, so that's why I was asking. So that's basically it. Um, thank you. I'm out of ideas. Thank you.
You know the Ecuadorian government just released they classified files about Hitler saying that he been there the whole time and he died there.
Wow.
Could be.
Yeah, I do know that the whole Hitler thing, his body at the Eagles Den, the base in Germany. There's a really good book on that. I mean, movie on that. By the way, you can get it on YouTube for free called Downfall. That shit's so hard. It's about the moment where Himmler told Hitler in a meeting that, hey, we're losing. and the SS and German military leadership realized they were going to lose the war, and they just went into like a debauchery. They're like, "Fuck it, we're going to lose." They all start getting drunk and high, and that is a wonderful movie called Downfall. Well, what Gone Fishing said is very true. It's all tied in together, which is what we're trying to figure out. Gone Fishing, we're trying to figure out what's this all about, because it's the detriment of us. Really, it all links to this. All these ideologies, and I give Wani credit for it. I had it floating around in my head, but sometimes dots don't connect. But she's right. It's all this. It all comes from these group of people. This is the vector of attack. I don't know what it's all about, Gone Fishing. I would love to know. We're going to do Capone, Mr. Freedom, and we're going to get a couple more speakers, and we'll call it a night. Go ahead, Capone.
All right. Good night. I mean, how everybody doing in the room, Professor, Sister Wani, Sister Nikki, the greats. You know, I see y'all out here.
Yes, sir.
You know, appreciate the scholar and the time. Appreciate the room, Professor. You know, all the knowledge and the time you put forth. You know, he's a wise individual along with the panel. But yeah, these people are crazy. They invented these situations to keep us in bondage mentally because they cannot do it physically. And I feel as if the Chinese people are still performing some of these, you know, German studies on people. You know how they got those when did they capture them people way back what was it, a couple years ago? How they captured all them Muslim people and started doing tests on them in human man, they sick. Yeah, they are sick. And then they trying to do some superhuman stuff with some of their military soldiers and shit, allegedly. You know, I don't want to get struck down by the room, but yeah, these people are crazy. And, you know, they got cohorts. And we are fighting an attack on all sides, dealing with these people on the same planet. You know, they don't think right. They think they animals. They have sex with animals and think it's normal. And, you know, they try to turn our women against us, which I'm glad they get the knowledge not to. But some of them, you know, people are still lost, but everybody can't go. So, I mean, with that being said, what was it? Yeah, and the other one was, when did, what was it that, what was it? What was it? He said something on Hitler. Yeah, that dude, yeah, they knew where he was at. They knew where he was at the whole time. They just didn't want us to know. You know, the U.S. covers up these secrets and, you know, throw the ball and tell us to look over there while the gold is over there. So we just got to realize the trick they playing and how to play it, because these devils, when you dance with them, you got to have a mean two-step. And I land on that. Love, peace, reparations, delineations, and deportations.
Right
Oh,
on.
I was just
Oh,
gonna
I love it when you say that.
I was just
Hey,
gonna
it's the truth. We need it all. We need it all.
I was just gonna mention that when I'm researching Hitler, I find that AI is very defensive of his reputation.
Hello.
I'm just saying.
Sure is, and a whole lot of other stuff that. Yep, you right, Sister Wani.
Yeah, but that's interesting.
Preach, Ronnie.
That's so interesting, Wani. I have some scholarship. I'll find it when the next speaker is talking. I read it every once a month or something that shows, that proves that Hitler was a failed artist, and he didn't get admitted to a school. He went to a school of art in Vienna, and
Vienna School of Art.
that's it. And
Why do y'all keep picking on Hitler like this?
it's
He was
relevant because
Busters.
He's my whipping
He was a
boy.
freaky man.
he's a freak. Well, it's relevant, not well, because he became a prostitute. He started slanging that thing, and the interesting thing is when he was into selling his thing.
Professor, you got to stop saying that, man. You putting crazy pictures
His
in my
pussy.
head, man.
I am dead over
I
here.
have
They keep
no
picking on
proof.
him.
I
When I was
was
a little
I
bit
doubt
never
that
fast,
he
that's
was
crazy.
I
slanging the
was
thing. I
never
think
able
he
to
was selling
prove
buses.
I was never able to prove that he was slinging his thing, but
I wouldn't doubt it, because you know in that
I
region,
did
Wani, they got the
prove,
She
Greco-Roman
said, but.
wrestlers.
He
She
was
but
said,
selling that
but.
bussy.
pause. I did
Pause.
prove
Pause.
that he was in those hotels where the men were slinging their things. I didn't see him slinging it, but he was over there where it was being slung.
I
That's all
think
I'm
he was
saying.
just looking at a duck that walked with other ducks.
He was doing
Yeah, why
some
was he over
things.
there? Why was he in the vicinity? Why was he over there? What reason did he have to be there?
Well, while he was doing what he did, he got approached by Novel Order Seclorum, a cult group. I think that means a new order of a no. I'm sorry, Novo Ordo Templi, the new order of Templars. There goes a word for you, ladies and gentlemen, Templars. I'm gonna leave that alone. But Hitler got into a spiritual occult seances, and you know what I think? I can't prove it, but I think these people got in touch with that Babylonian spiritual system, and they're in contact with some type of evil. I think it's an old evil, maybe spiritual, maybe of extraterrestrial origin. Um, Maybe those are the same thing. Who knows? But that's where this attack is coming from, and it goes back to Babylon.
Well, they said they were helped by, you know, space creatures.
There you go.
Want me to read the quote? I
Go
mean,
ahead.
let me read the quote. I don't have it right here.
Oh, Sister Wani, I got a
I
trivia
got it.
question for you.
Okay, I'm going to read it real quick and then the question. We cannot take credit for our record advancement in certain scientific fields alone. We have been helped. When asked who exactly had given help, he said, the people of other worlds.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm from Alabama. NASA was created in Alabama by a deal with the. I'm gonna say a deal with the devil, because the was it Operation
Mhm.
Paperclip? The,
Yes.
the United States government wanted the technology that the Nazis were implementing, and we made our government made deals with fucking brutal murderers, people that I mean, they had one experiment where they had little boys, a pair of twins identical, and they just wanted to know what happened if they killed a twin and they separate them in rooms and just killed one of them. They wanted to know what happened to the other one. You know what happened? The other one just dropped dead mysteriously. What's that about? But we made a deal with these people to know what they know, and Werner von Braun was sent to my home state of Alabama, Huntsville, to create NASA. And Werner came down with a real bad aggressive cancer, I think in the 80s. And there was a PhD candidate from University of North Alabama who got an interview. It's on tape. I can't find it anymore, which is interesting. But they interviewed Werner when he was dying. He was within a week of dying. And she asked him, where did you get all this technology from? And Werner said what Wani just said. He said with a straight face, people from other worlds. And Werner said before he died, there's going to be a time where these people, could it be the Anunnaki? I don't know, are going to come back, and there's going to be another galactic war in the sky. Now, as a historian, that fills in a lot of gaps to me, because when you look at civilization from Babylon, Egypt, um, Mayan civilization, you look at any event, Rome, any advanced civilization, when it reaches a zenith, when it reaches a certain point, they mysteriously disappear. And y'all want to know what I think? I think it's a possibility that these people from other worlds just wipes it out and starts over anew. Why is that dangerous? That's dangerous because our civilization is at a peak. We're at a zenith. Are we going to get wiped out from the sky? I don't know, but Mr. Freedom might. What do you think, Mr. Freedom?
I appreciate the segue. Oh my goodness. I was sleeping. I didn't know y'all was cooking like this. Thank you so much for bringing me up. This is, I'm sure everybody is like spine tingling, like, what the heck are they talking about? um, but yeah, it gets really interesting. Good to see you, Sister Nikki, Sister Wani. Thank you, Professor. Twizzle, my goodness. Did you get that tag I tagged you in? I put a little extra on what you was talking about with the wild men. I hope you got that. But I'm posting down in the purple pill. Please look into it. Stop reading my mind, Professor. You hear me?
I'm psychic. I'm serious. I have a gift that I don't talk about.
I hear you loud and clear. I've been putting together this information, and y'all just over here just talking about it. that's that's why I'm like I'm blown away a little bit because one of the things I've been wanting to send you is Tariq talked about the Great Dismal Swamp, right? And
Right.
I touched on it. I think it was yesterday. I don't know. I don't. My sleep schedule's a little off, but the I'm gonna try to say what's happening without saying too much, because some things it's like when you know certain things as a I'm not saying I'm a scientist, but if you know certain things, just because you know how to do certain things doesn't mean you should do it. And that's the problem with scientists. You see what I mean? Like just because you can think something that matters. Articulating something actually makes it real when you're saying the word. So I hope you understand.
Right.
Okay, so this it's not that I'm trying to sound spooky and like I'm so great and I know all of this. It's when, like you said yourself, we're tapped into something greater, and just because you can think it, these beings that do these things, like you were talking about, Sister Wani, that just want to try and do everything. Okay, um, they were a part of creation that had no willpower. Okay, and that zenith you're talking about, we're heading towards again, the loss of willpower. Okay, we're talking about nanotechnology. I've been posting a lot about it. Been posting a lot about it. There's a extreme version of that where there's no willpower. And then imagine what happens once you come out of having zero willpower in your cellular being. Like literally, you're not able to think a free thought, and then you're freed from that. These beings just go crazy. And it's influenced by something that you might not think about. Okay, and it's relative to the golden mean and that cross symbol. All right, if you look up what's called a wildman, doghead, wood woes, wood Norse, cynocephali, or basically dog headed creature. Okay, um, these beings have straight alimentarius canals. All right. The reason I bring that up, that's the opening of your mouth to your anus or your sphincter. Okay. With us, we have spiral. It's like the golden mean. It's like the golden ratio. Okay. That's your constitution or your
Mm.
constellation. So with beings that have straight alimentarius canals, they are able to digest putrescine and niacin and these compounds that are breaking down um, uh, dead bodies, corpses, and that's what they're used for. That's the skull and the bones. All right, they're clean. They clean the underworld, the dogs. All right, but they're influenced by Canis Major, Minor, Rigel, and the Dog Star. Okay, that's why I brought that up. The influence, just like you know about the waters being influenced by the moon, well, those constellations they influence as well, and they have stardust. There's moon dust, there's stardust, there's you get moon stars, you get dog stars. Okay, and those people that live in places that get a lot of meteors and they get a lot of solar winds from those constellations, they actually everything that's out there in the universe is reflected here on Earth as well. It's like a at least the way that certain mystery schools would say is like this is like a place where anything can be hologramically projected. It's like an infinitarium, like you say a planetarium, but when you're talking about spells and words, you can kind of you put words together like that. It might sound like I just made up a word, but that's what they do when they're spells are like they take the words and they put them together like that. That's true alchemy. So it's an infinitarium is what we're living in. Okay, and it's a womb. It's a womb. It's a primordial water womb where you plant seeds and things grow. It's an infinitarium that we live in. All right, and I'm saying all this to say there was a period of time, and I posted down below. That tapestry, it shows the wild men in the woods, as they say when they lose, right? They'll say, "Okay, well we're gonna fight our war, and then we're gonna go into the woods and lick our wounds," right? You've heard that in politics. politics, right? um, and they're hearkening back to that. You'll even find, and use AI, please. You'll find there are medieval dog head like um, armor for these type of beings when they existed. All right. And if you know these words, I want you to go back and listen to this. You'll be able to pick it up they put it in your face. Like there's a show called The Decamerion, and it talks about the Black Plague era. And one of the episodes, it mentions the cynocephali. My mind would have never even caught it. Um, and it actually shows the aristocrats as being melanated people too, you know. So um, they'll put the stuff in your face. But basically, I'm just saying all that to say these people primarily were created on the Solomon Islands. I want you to look that up. That's where they get their Soul of Man or Solomon
Really?
Islands. Yes.
But they're not the Solomon Island natives?
I don't know. I don't know all of I don't know all the specific details. I know there's multiple iterations of beings that are created, and
Isn't it
as they're
on
being
the Isles
upgraded.
of Man?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Isn't it close to the Isles of Man?
I have to look that up. I'm sure it's all in the same area. It was mainly perfected in Lower Egypt. It was perfected in Lower Egypt. Okay. The maps are flipped around, so the older part is in upper, but the man was perfected in Lower Egypt. Okay. But these beings, they are able to process um and when we talk about spirits, negative spirits, anything to do with the dead. When it comes to cleaning carcasses, pigs, dogs, that's why Anubis has a dog head in his the iconography, if you want to call it. Um, if you look at those things, these deal with the underworld. And anything that's relative to that entropy process in the cycle of life, that's where your negative spirits come from. It's all about breaking down. It's all about breaking the rules. It's literally the linchpin that death is a spiral in life. It can spark life, but for beings that are obsessed with that, death is life to them, and everything that's involved with it, the gases and um, the decay, it all that's their god. That's what they worship. But anyway, just look into that, and this is one thing that'll be interesting, and I'll move on. Look up every kind of cliche or pun related to the word dog, like dog eat dog world,
Dogma.
dog morals and dogma. Exactly. You got it. You do the anagram, do you know, the god, and you'll go down a wonderful rabbit hole.
Wonderful. We're gonna get one more speaker. Well, two if Melancholy. Melancholy, you here? You showed up yet? Okay.
That reminds me when someone said to look up all of the references to cannibalism. Like he bit my head off, and I had listed a lot of them that are just in common
My
speech.
favorite
Very
one that I
interesting.
hate is when white people say, "Oh, you screwed the pooch." I'm like, yeah,
I don't like
Yeah,
that one either.
it's not
yeah,
good.
okay.
Yeah, you guys, it's
Professor, I got a
showing too
quick
much.
Go
question.
ahead, bro.
Freeman, how advanced are these people? I mean, this entity you're describing, and you mentioned nanobots.
Uh, uh, uh hold it. Who you asking?
I'm asking you, young man.
Okay. I'm trying to decide because it's been written about. I hate to put certain things out into these algorithms. Uh, mm,
But you mentioned, I know you. I'm hearing other beings, and I'm hearing like
okay.
from from out of this world or
I'm gonna break it down
in this
plainly to
world.
you. I'll answer your question, but I'm not going to get into the details. And forgive me for
Right.
that because
It's quite all right.
because we have such free will, we can influence That's how we can influence outcomes. It's going to happen the way it's going to happen. It's going to play out. But that's what's so interesting, and the need for controlling, especially us, melanin people, because we can actually change it. So okay, it's the same cycle every time. It's you have your original source beings, okay, however, whatever way they exist, whatever level of gravity and density that they exist. So that's all it is. Gravity is real, and density, that all matters. Okay, that's important. However they uh, personify themselves, there's an original being, and then there's a being that creates a slave. Always happens, and that slave, at some point, no matter how long it takes, wants to be free. And I would assume through the laws of physics, at some point it has to happen, because that's just the way the universe works. Um, there has, for one thing to exist, its opposite must exist. All right, and at some point you are going to reach that extreme polarity.
You know,
Okay, so there, think of this on like a galactic level. There are beings that um, are like cyborgs, um, and they have no will. They have no will. Okay, so what would somebody that had no will? What would they be the most jealous of? I'm asking you, housing.
a person would say that again now.
If someone who has no will at all, they have no ability to choose, but they are able to see or perceive something that does have infinite will. What would they be jealous of?
You.
The person that has will, right?
Yes,
Free
you.
will. Okay, so and because the way that the universe works, um, off of these extremes, at some point, something that doesn't have any will is going to find its way into having will, and that's all that's happening. That's all that's happening. And there's major consequences. There's going to be, like you said, there's going to be a reset. There's going to be a war. There's going to be a fight. There's going to be a boom. It's going to be a crash. Something's going to happen, because that's also how things are made. We talk about dissolution, and
Right.
when you're creating something, you're breaking things apart.
But you used a compound word, and it had infinity at at the end of it. Say it again.
Oh, I was taking like planetarium and infinity. If
And
you read a lot of really old books, they use words in ways that it would put all squiggly red lines up underneath. You're like, what the hell? Why they put these words together? It makes no sense. You wouldn't find them in any dictionary, but these are alchemists that you're dealing with. These are wizards when you hear these type of words. So I said, infinitarium.
there you go.
Yeah,
What
infinitarium.
what what Mr. Freedom's talking about is what I was saying earlier in 1920, that Rockefeller went through and erased all that shit in the education books. Matter of fact, this yesterday was the first day, was a new year. Gregorian went and changed the calendar to some shit that didn't make sense. It was skew. Well, why did he do that? He did that because the old calendar, which was perfectly made up of, I think, was it 20, every month had 28 days or something? It's in your face.
28 days,
Mm,
13 months.
Yeah. There you go. And it's in your face. We got to look at words. October, that's the 10th month, right? According to Gregorian. But that's bullshit. What does oct mean? That means eight. It's supposed to be the eighth month. Well, anyway,
exactly.
we're in the first of the year. We're really in 2025, starting yesterday. So we're in the nine now. Housing, to kind of put what he said into context. If you look at the number eight is not a number eight, it's infinity. There's a circle at the top
Yes.
and a circle at the bottom. That means there's a positive infinity and a negative infinity. It's a law. Um, uh, Thoth or Hermes said that they called it the laws of polarity, as above, so below. That It's very deep.
Right.
We're gonna get one more speaker and we're gonna call it a night. Hakeem been up here for a while. Hakeem, you got last words, bro.
Hey, thank you for selecting me. What's up to the family?
Mm.
I put in the purple pill. There was this book I read by Henry M. Markov. Man, it speaks about what you spoke about with Professor Greff, Aleister Crowley, The Do As Thou Wilt. Have you ever heard of that book, or have you ever read it, or anything like that?
I haven't, but I'm gonna get it. I'll read it this
Oh
summer.
man, when I tell you it messes. If you family, if you guys read that book, and you're just getting into these deep conversations, it will mess with everything that you know. One thing I kind of figured, I after I read it, it was like, say we're all playing chess, right? And it's your turn to go, but no matter what you do, no matter where you go, like, you're beset on all sides, but you gotta go. And if you read that book, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. And the solution to that is, if you can't go and we're playing chess, the thing that you got to do is you got to flip the table. Okay? You got to destroy all of it, because no matter what you do, no matter what move you put, they already got you. They already got you. So you got to scrap that whole game. And that's my analogy for that book.
Yeah, the system we're in is rigged, and it's starting to kind of collapse in our country because people can't afford. Prices have gone skyrocket, but uh, wages haven't changed in a meaningful way since 1970. You got people in my generation, millennials, that make six figures that really can't afford to get a house. It's getting out of control. From my view of history, something has to give. I don't know what's going to give, but something has to give. Yes, sir.
Professor, $30 for two sodas and a thing of popcorn at the movies.
Dude, I went to get some fucking some sodas. You bring up sodas. My mind is blown. I live in Atlanta, and a pack of like Coke Zero, like the cans, is like $8, man. Who can afford this stuff? You got people making $100,000 a year that's struggling. You got attorneys out here that in Atlanta that living in apartments with kids and shit, man. It's out of hand. But looking back on history is the best way to predict the future. And the predictions I draw from history are not good. So back to the topic. Did Germanic people create narcotics? Yes. Psyops? Yes. Feminism? Absolutely. Nuclear weapons? I'm going to say they didn't create nuclear weapons, because if you look at the Indian Vedas, there's evidence that nuclear weapons existed 5,000 years ago. So my question is, where they come from? Did they come from us or come from visitors from another world? I enjoyed y'all tonight. I learned a lot. We will continue this topic. And I appreciate your contributions. Wani, did you have any last words?
Good night.
Nikki?
Hey,
Well,
good to see you
Good
guys.
night. Good night. Good night.
okay.
Good night.
If you're looking at Jumbotron, you'll see Wani Spots and Nikki the Gods their Cash App. Show them love. I have Our Story Publications, my Cash App. You want a copy of my book where I talk about stuff I can't really talk about on Spaces. You can buy it for $25. Put $25 on Cash App and put your full address and full name in the Cash App, and I will send it out to you shortly. I sent out a group of books today, but I had a couple people that purchased my book last week and the week before that did not put their address. Please look at your Cash App and make sure that you put an address in there. If not, go ahead and just update an address. I really enjoyed y'all, and I'll see y'all next time.